Welcome to I'm Going In, the newest and hottest podcast sharing incredible stories of strength, resilience, and love. This podcast is about that moment when you face trauma or been knocked down and you decide, I'm going in. Whether it's to help yourself stand back up, to strengthen your faith, or to support others, this is where inspiration begins. Like and subscribe to my social channels and get ready to be uplifted as I introduce our next incredible guest on I'm Going In. Hey everybody, welcome back to I'm Going In. Today I've got an incredible guest that I was introduced to through a mutual friend that we have up in the Minnesota area. So it's another Minnesotian, and I was born in Edina. So I'm excited to have this brother on, but his name is John Kriesel. He is a former Minnesota politician, but also a former veteran, retired veteran. And so thank you, sir, for your service, number one.
Thank you.
And he's also a co-host of a morning power trip show called Power Trip Morning Show with KFan FM radio up in the Minneapolis, Twin Cities area. So, John, thank you for coming on. I'm Going In. I really appreciate it. We talked a little bit in the green room, let's call it, or offline, just about some of the things that you're doing in the service and trying to help veterans. So I really want to get into that. But yeah, tell me your story. You know, one of the things I like to ask is, especially to our vets and our first responders that we bring on, is what was the reasoning that you wanted to join the military, number one, and then kind of get into your deployments a little bit. I want you to be as comfortable as you can. You don't have to go into all the details. You know, what this show is all about is just really sharing the stories of the moment when you were told to either go in to do something that may have been traumatic. And then if that trauma ensued, that mission, when was it in your lifespan afterwards that you decided, you know what, I need to go in for help? So let's start with, why did you join the military and get into the Army?
So I was around 10 years old when the first Gulf War was on TV.
Wow.
It was the first time that I had seen, and I mean, before now, it seems like every day on the news, you see our military in action, launching, responses to attacks or whatever. But at that time, especially as a young boy, seeing the televised conflict happening on the other side of the world, it brought it close to home. And I just remember as a little boy seeing how honorable these men and women are, keeping us, putting it all on the line to keep us safe. And so from that moment on, I said, that's what I want to do when I grow up. So I joined on my 17th birthday, which was the minute I could. I joined the Minnesota Army National Guard. And
Wow.
so I went to basic training the summer after my junior year in high school, came back, did my senior year. I went to White Bear Lake High School north of St. Paul, Minnesota, and then went to infantry school the summer after that. And so I graduated in 2000. So I came back at the end of the summer of 2000 as a fully trained member of the National Guard. And obviously the situation was much different back then. So it was primarily just doing your 1 week and a month of training. And I joined that because I knew that if I really liked the military, I could change to active duty. But if you join active duty, you got to wait till your contract's up to go to the National Guard. So that's where I was like, it was a good way of starting when you're 17, learning about it, doing it. And then I never really had to join active duty because the deployment started relatively quickly.
Yeah. Wow. And when were you deployed?
So I went to Kosovo in 2004. Now the train up for that started in 2003. But we had heard about it a while before that even. In Iraq and Afghanistan was going on. So when we were notified that we were deploying, we assumed that that's where we were going. And we found out we're going to Kosovo, which was relatively calm compared to what was going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so, but still a good way to really see a different part of the world. And it was still chaotic. We were there keeping peace between two groups of people that have hated each other so long they don't even know why. It's the way it always has been.
So yeah, and you watch it in the news, right? Coming from a civilian's perspective, you see our brave men and women that are putting our nation's uniforms on and going overseas, and you see them going over in groves, and obviously there's a very serious factor there, right? I mean, people are losing their lives everywhere, but you're there to maintain peace, to bring safety into particular regions day in and day out, and probably a lot of times unappreciated in terms of where you're at, right? Even though you might be fighting for the good guys, uh, there's probably still all these dangers that you're constantly heads probably on a 360 swivel. How do you how do you and the soldiers there maintain your own kind of self mental being when you're in that chaotic moment for so long?
So the Kosovo one was interesting because, especially having never been on a deployment before that, we went there and really just kind of expected kind of the situation where it was more dangerous, and it really wasn't. There was a flare up
Mm,
around. It was about a month into our deployment. There was an uprising between the two groups, and so there were large riots where we had to be involved and neutralize these crowds and kind of calm the chaos down, get control of the situation. And I mean, we thought that was the craziest thing we'd ever see, until my Iraq deployment a year and a half later. And so it was a weird deal because you go there guarded, and then we're like, oh, this is nothing. Then there was that flare up, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, is this going to be how it is the whole time? That unrest lasted about a week. Once that calmed down, really, we realized we were fortunate that never really were we in fear of our lives
yeah,
over there, especially after that time. So
yeah,
we got to see, and especially as a 22-year-old young man, I think the biggest takeaway I got was that was my first time in a war-torn third world country. And so it made me really, at a young age, appreciate what we have here, even
yeah,
on our bad days, even when we're thinking, oh, this place, because America's not perfect, no place is,
right.
but it's pretty damn awesome. And
Mm.
I learned that was my biggest takeaway from the Kosovo deployment.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. Just the appreciation that so our soldiers have when they come back home, and it's the small things, going to a McDonald's or whatever it may be, right?
The little
And
things.
the little things, yeah, yeah. But at times it probably resets your balance of what, like you mentioned, what is drama, what is not, what's worth fighting over when you come home, and what's worth just kind of letting go because you've seen things, right? That
Sure.
that most of us don't appreciate our military enough for what they go through, and our first responders as well here in the States, and really globally. I think anybody that puts their life out there, puts a uniform on to help others, goes through some sort of traumatic event at some point.
Sure.
Um, but so you come home and then you get deployed to Iraq.
Yeah.
So I know this could be a challenging story, and so I'd love
I'm
for you
fine
to
talking
share.
about
You
whatever. Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely 100%.
Okay. I always
Um,
want to make sure that we're just keeping your sanity and everything in mind. So,
I
yeah, do you
appreciate it.
mind walking us through what you went through? Because you really do have an incredible story, and then where it really uh, the aftermath, and we'll probably talk a little bit in between there.
Of
But
course.
yeah, please walk us through your experience in Iraq, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got back from Kosovo and I decided I was going to get out because my contract was expiring with the National Guard. And so I wanted to be a paramedic firefighter for the St. Paul Fire Department. I had one of my friends that I'd been in Kosovo with who had been with St. Paul Fire for a while, loved it, always talked about how much he loved his job. And it was a way to serve, but in a different capacity. So I was signing up for EMT classes the following summer. And then
Wow.
I got a call from a different buddy that I've been deployed to Kosovo with, and he said, "There's an Iraq deployment coming up. The train up starts next year. I know your thoughts on it. Talk to your family, get back to me." So I talked to my family, and they knew I wanted to, but I still obviously wanted to have them in the loop on my decision, and at least hear them out and have them hear me out instead of just going, "Yep, I'm going." Um,
Mm.
but there's no way I was going to sit back at Fort Living Room while my closest buddies deployed. So I re-enlisted, and then those of us who had been on the Kosovo deployment, we weren't going to be forced to go on this one because we hadn't been home long enough. There's like a mandatory cool down period.
Okay.
And so we had to sign a waiver. A COTTAD was the abbreviation for it. I don't know what it stands for, but it's very clear on there.
You were signing.
What you're signing up to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I signed up for that and then went through EMT classes following summer, tried out for St. Paul Fire to get my name on the list. And then October 1 of 2005, so less than a year after, or maybe a little over a year after I'd gotten back from Kosovo, we were already then starting to train up for Iraq. And so we did that, trained up in Mississippi. Then we went to Kuwait for 2 weeks. And then we ended up at Camp Fallujah, Iraq, which is a Marine Corps base. And so we're an Army National Guard unit. We're pretty much the only Army unit on that base. They eased us into it from just kind of being force protection, which we thought was going to be boring because you're keeping, and no one's going to just storm the gates and attack a major American military base because they're not going to win. And so, so we were like, what are we doing here? Why did we volunteer for this? This is boring. Well, there was a plan to it. They ease you in. And so we started then patrols further out and further out to really push the insurgents far enough away from Camp Fallujah that they couldn't hit the base with mortars and rockets. So they would be too far because there's 19,000 service members and the Camp Fallujah areas at that time was one of the busiest in a combat dangerous way. One of the most dangerous areas in Iraq, especially Western Iraq. And so that was kind of the ramping up to it. And so then our danger increased. We started really taking the fight to the insurgents, but then they were fighting us back. And so then it was really IEDs were the primary methods of attack. There was a complex attack on one of our compounds. We had these two compounds we also had to protect and launch patrols from. And it was a little closer to where the action was. And then we were, throughout the deployment, by the fall of 2006, we were one of only 3 squads that were lucky enough to not hit an IED. And then eventually, like everything, if you're just operating on luck, that's going to run out. And so, so we eventually then on December 2nd, 2006, we're on a patrol to go check out some suspicious activity. We had kind of mixed up our group because it was, hey, there's something going on. Who wants to go? And 5 of us volunteered and essentially said, I'm going in. And we go check it out. 5 of us in a Humvee. And we were kind of rotated. My buddy Tim is the team leader or the squad leader. I'm a team leader, but on this patrol, I said, I'm going to lead I'm going to sit in the right front seat. I'm going to be vehicle commander. And we battled a little bit about it. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever. So then we went and got down there, and the suspicious activity ended up not being anything. But when we were there, they called us to check out a guy digging in the road. And at that point, we went to go check it out. And we had a Bradley fighting vehicle ahead of us, which is a 32-ton armored personnel carrier. And I remember calling in. They said the person was digging at checkpoint 3-4. I remember we calling in checkpoint 3-1. Checkpoint 3-2, and as we called in checkpoint 3-3, we had to make this 90-degree turn to head to the south for that last stretch of road. And as we rounded that, I remember hearing this metallic plink and this loud whooshing sound like you do when you do a cannonball into a swimming pool, where everything's kind of muffled, rocks falling. I hadn't yet opened my eyes, but I heard rocks hitting the ground, rocks hitting metal. It sounded like a hailstorm. So I knew what had happened. I opened my eyes. I didn't feel pain, but I knew I'd been hurt pretty badly because I felt pretty twisted. I looked down, I saw that my left arm was broken. Both ulna and the radius were broken, so it was kind of flopped. I applied traction, held that against my chest, and I remember being really concerned about my arm. I was like, and I think out loud, I was saying like, damn it, I hope there's not any nerve damage, even though I'm right-handed, but still. I looked down then and saw my left leg was, the femur was sticking out. It was basically connected by my pant leg, essentially. My right leg below the knee looked like I stuck it in a wood chipper and was bleeding profusely. So that's where I was pretty sure my life was going to end. And that was the start of really the worst day of my life. And so it was the seeing it in all of the chaos of the situation, once I saw that, I knew obviously the situation was serious. That vehicle ahead of us. So what had happened though was when we turned that corner, our left front tire drove over a pressure plate that set off 200 pounds of homemade explosives that had been packed into two large propane tanks. And that's what went off underneath our vehicle because they set the trigger and our tire hit it. And it was like, it spray painted to blend in with the gravel road. So we didn't see it. And then we knew we were obviously in bad shape. Our guys came back to then help out, apply tourniquets. Wow. They stayed obviously very calm. My buddy, it was funny because, and the looking back on it too, how everyone handles everything different. I had my first buddy, Adam Gallant, from far northwest Minnesota. He was like, he's the very serious, like, I don't want the labor pains, just give me the baby kind of guy.
Oh, yeah.
And he comes up and he was like, Kries, your legs are really bad, okay, but we're going to get you out of here. I was like, all right. He put the tourniquet on the one that was bleeding, you know, real bad. Next guy that comes up was the opposite. He's like, hey, buddy, you look great. Everything's awesome. You're going to, you know, and like the opposites of how both handled it great, but in two different ways. And just really kind of just calmed the situation, even though obviously I'm not a blind man. I can see that the situation's dire, but they both got their tourniquets on and really in the chaos of the situation. Two of them to deal with five of us while another guy's pulling security because this was a perfect setup for an ambush. So the whole time as we're sitting there, we're thinking, we're sitting ducks, we're going to get attacked. But that Bradley fighting vehicle, those insurgents do not want to mess with.
Yeah. Wow. John, thank you for walking us through that extremely traumatic event. Your buddies, I know you guys don't like to hear the term heroes or anything else, but really they came in and just tried to comfort you in that time when you're at your worst state ever in your life.
Right.
And you joined the military at 10, or mentally at 10 years old, you were wanted to be a soldier, and now you're over defending and fighting for people, and fighting for our freedom as well. And something such as horrific like that happens. At what point, how long were you there? Did they fly in a copter and get you out? And talk to us about that kind of experience and what you went through, you know, with your surgeries.
So once they got me stabilized as far as stopping the bleeding and getting that really everything tightened down, and they were having to deal with the five of us, and I could hear someone near me, one of my friends that clearly that's when I knew I wasn't the most severely injured one. I could hear one of my friends fighting for their life. And so at that point I knew with all the blood I lost, it's weird. So I've been told 11 minutes from explosion to helicopter arriving, and I've been told 18 minutes. So somewhere around that, which is still a remarkably fast response time for a medevac helicopter. Everything slows down. And I know with your experience, how obviously it's chaotic, but and it's tough to explain. I know you get it to where everything slows down.
Yeah.
And it's very, so I mean, I was thinking my life was kind of flashing before my eyes. I decided, okay, I can't lose any more blood. So I need to stay calm. And so I don't want to see my body in that kind of condition. I thought if I do survive, in the unlikely event I do survive this ordeal, do I want that visual image of one of my best friends either dead or dying burned into my mind, which I will never unhear the sounds he was making. And so I don't want that visual on top of that. Additionally, I need to keep my heart rate down and stay calm because I've lost a ton of blood. I mean, when it's puddling up in the desert sand, not great.
Yeah.
And so they were working on him, trying to save him. And then they came over and said, we got to move you because this vehicle's on its side. It's unstable. It's very, it's in real tough shape. And I don't know if this has the ability to throw pictures on later, but I'd be happy to send you a picture of what the vehicle looked like afterwards.
Oh yeah, we can put that up right now.
But it ended up, if it tipped, it would have crushed us both. So they came, they had to move me. And so Gallant, like I said, doesn't sugarcoat anything. He said, "We're going to have to move you, buddy. This is going to suck real bad." So they flipped my legs up onto my chest.
Oh,
One guy grabs onto my arm. The only other spot to grab was my butt, my slabs. And so they didn't know, nor did I know, that my pelvis, both wings of my pelvis had been broken.
oh,
And so while I didn't really feel pain and the other stuff, when they flipped my legs up and lifted me, I felt that.
yeah.
And so they had already, like, when they saw me like falling asleep and stuff, they'd run by and they'd be slapping me, like, "Keep your eyes open." And at one point I'm like, haven't I been through enough? They're trying to beat me to death. I'd surround this bomb and I'm like, "Hey,
Wow.
fellas, could we calm down a little bit? This hurts."
Yeah.
And so they moved me to a safer spot, had our gunner, who'd been blown out of the top of the vehicle, had a brain injury, as he was talking the same thing over and over, although I'm pretty sure he started the deployment with the brain injury. And they had him talking to me, keeping me talking, and he's repeating the same questions, though. So I'm like, "Miller, shut up." But it worked because I was staying awake and alert. So then helicopter arrives. When it took off, and I remember, too, the medic was very young. He hadn't seen anything like this. So he was running. When the medic arrived, it was a ground ambulance. As the medevac helicopter was kind of coming in, he comes up to me and was like, "Oh, whoa," which I'm like, "Could you just pretend?"
Yeah.
Like,
thank you.
Yeah, like Todd was like, "Oh, man, what a great, beautiful day this is. That shrapnel fixed your face. You're looking amazing." Like, and so the medic, though, goes, "Sergeant Kriesel, I'm going to give you morphine." And I remember, for whatever reason, my response was, "Whatever, dude." So he stuck the morphine in my thigh. They load me in the helicopter. I heard a couple other people get loaded on, and then that thing took off. And I remember them asking me my social security number. And they're like, "John, we need to know your social security number." And I was so tired, I couldn't get the first number of it out. And that's the last thing I remember till I woke up 8 days later in Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. So for 8 days,
Wow.
yeah, they shocked me back to life at the first field hospital in Iraq. So they flew me to Al-Taqaddum. They had to shock me back to life 3 times, which I knew I was close to dying because I'd been awake for a lot of the, on the scene. But I remember when we were writing my book, Still Standing, interviewing everyone involved to make sure it was 100% accurate and respectful of those involved, especially the time, when I was in the coma. When I heard that, I was like, "Holy smokes, that is," it was chilling. But they didn't give up. They stabilized me for flight to Balad. Balad, they stabilized me for Landstuhl, Germany. Landstuhl, I missed flights because I wasn't stable. My family was basically flown over to say goodbye because my situation had deteriorated.
Wow.
And then they kept me, they restabilized me, got me to Walter Reed. So that's when I woke up. And I woke up to an unfamiliar woman's voice saying, John, do you know where you're at?" So it's just like college. And then I saw it was a hospital room. So I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I know where this is. I saw my legs and I was like, as badly as I wanted it to be a dream, it clearly was not. And then everything kind of came rushing back to me, the sights, the sounds, the smells.
Yeah.
And I asked about everyone involved. And that's when I learned 2 of my best buddies, Corey Risted from Red Lake Falls, Minnesota, and Brian McDonough from Maplewood, Minnesota, had both been killed in the blast. So for me, that was my rock bottom, was hearing that, that moment. Everything is when they do this too, when they're putting you through all these surgeries. And at that point, I don't know how many I had been through. The life-saving ones where they took my legs. I had shrapnel that went through my intestines, so they had to deal with that. Pelvis had been shattered. So I don't know the count at that point. By the end of everything, it was 35 when I left Walter Reed. But it was when they're doing the life-saving stuff, they don't care about the explosive powder in your eyebrows and your hair. Like, they're not going to clean you up so you're pretty. They're going to deal with the injuries. So when I woke up, I could smell kind of the death, like
Yeah.
the really I mean, probably similar to that, what you went through, where there's really not a way, just where you, just that smell
Yeah.
of of what,
Yeah.
of everything that happened. And
Yeah.
that's when I realized, um, regardless of my injuries, regardless of if I was going to walk again, because with my pelvis, they said, we don't know what we're going to be able to do with this. Um, that was the moment that I truly realized how lucky I was, and realized that it'd be crappy of me to feel sorry for myself when I got a second chance at life. Two of my best friends didn't get. And that's when I really said, I'm going to make the best out of every minute I have left on this planet. And that's when I decided, I made the choice to have a good attitude about it, because I realized how lucky I was.
Man, amazing. You hear your story about just how getting bounced around, and then you think about like where I was thinking too was your buddies that were trying to stay calm with you, watching and seeing what you're going through from their perspective and how traumatic that was. I know in my situation, I was that person trying to calm people down that had been unfortunately shot and brutalized.
Right.
Um, the the traumatic moment there, and then going through all of your surgeries and the fight you had, to stay alive. Number one, was is astounding. And then, I want to get into your book too down the road here as we're talking, but uh, did you ever experience while you were coming to and sitting in that hospital, did you ever experience that kind of moment of silence? Because you talk about the smells and the sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I still today can, and I'm sure you can as well. I
Mm-hmm.
still can hear it, the screams and all the different things that you hear, the visuals. I don't think you're ever going to be able to get that out. Never. We learn through, and I want you to talk about that part of it, your journey to learn how to walk with your trauma, to keep it out
Sure.
in front of you and all these things. But while you're in the hospital, while you're at home, did you ever experience a moment of silence that overwhelmed you so much that you basically got scared? You didn't know where you were going, what you were supposed to be doing. All of a sudden, like everything just kind of comes in on you. And if you did experience that, was there somebody that disrupted that silence? Was there somebody that reached down and lifted you up, gave you guidance, got you out of that darkness mentally, and got you to a point where you said, I'm going to do whatever I can to be the best person I can be?
Yes. So there was, but I think that there's kind of three of them for me,
Okay.
and they were in stages, kind of, because when you're coming to from that, and everything's kind of piling back on you, and I remember everything from it, which I'm glad, because I don't think, I think it would have been much more difficult to deal with if I had been knocked out immediately when the bomb went off, and I woke up in the United States, saw this, and was like, what's going on? But I will never forget laying on the desert sand, seeing the blood, seeing my injuries, and thinking at 25 years old, I'm going to die. This is it. And
Wow.
a weird, helpless feeling, not giving up ever, because when I when shortly after that, in all the chaos of it, I grabbed Adam Gallant, and I looked at him and I said, tell my family I love them.
Yeah.
And he told me, shut up, you're going to tell them yourself. And that is the moment that I realized I can survive. I don't give up. So I did. So then when I woke up at Walter Reed and realized that Corey and Brian had been killed, that I had all of this going on, I realized, though, I'm pretty damn lucky. And regardless of my injuries, I got that second chance, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to waste it. But I'd be lying if I said that immediately. I was like, you know what? This is going to turn out awesome. I'm going to end up back in Minnesota, and everything's going to be wonderful, and you're going to be happier than you've ever been in your whole life. Just be patient, give it time. I would have said, no way, you're out of your mind. But that moment there is just kind of the, what do I do? But then realizing there's a plan. There's someone in the room next to me that's going through the same thing, and the room next to me, and the room next to me, and the room next to me. That there's a plan, and these are the best in the world at helping you through it. that was comforting. But then I think, for losing the two buddies, then a month later, opening my computer to check and see if the Minnesota Wild won the game the night before. And then, boom, I see on the front page, St. Paul soldier killed in Iraq. And I was like, this has got to be someone from our brigade of 3,500 people. I wonder who it is. And then clicking on the article and seeing a picture of another one of my best friends, Jimmy Wassinger from St. Paul.
Wow.
That moment of silence and feeling alone, even though, because I yelled, I was obviously upset about it. Nurses and everyone came in thinking it was a nightmare or something. So they're like, what do you need? Whatever. Realizing what happened. And they stood there in support, but they knew nothing they were going to say was going to make it better. So it was weird, like being in a room full of people that have been taking amazing care of you for a month, that have become your family, and still feeling alone.
Yeah.
That one. And then the very third, I think, was after all my recovery, my 9 months at Walter Reed, getting home, and then dropping my first marriage, I had two stepsons, dropping my stepsons off at school, and then my ex-wife going to work and me going back to our home. That was about the loudest quiet I've ever heard, because now it was, what do I do? The show must go on. Everyone's going on with their life. I need to move on with my life. But that was, I think, the loudest of the quiets, like you're referring to.
Wow. And
a long rambling answer to a simple question.
No, but you're hitting on all the, I'm like getting, the hairs are standing up, because I think anybody that's experienced, not obviously to your level of injury and everything else, but that trauma that ensues, and just hearing the stories of that story of all the nurses rushing in and then standing there like, okay, we can't fix his body.
Right.
Like, we can fix his body, but we can't fix his mind. We can't fix that emotion that you're having right now and that scared feeling of that silent moment. And for them to at least give you that solitude and that comfort, knowing that physically they're there for you, mentally they're there for you, but they're going to give you that moment to have that grace, right? To be able to soak it in and let you grieve for that instant.
Right. And the anger, like
powerful.
All of it. It's because I remember just being so angry and helpless too, because here I'm out of the fight and my buddies are still there every day.
Yeah.
They say goodbye to Corey and Brian, said, hopefully see you later to me. I've got, and they obviously didn't know my condition for a while because it was touch and go. But then that helpless feeling of knowing my buddies are still in danger. I hope more of them don't. That was my worst fear when I woke up, was that now I'm out of the fight. I'm helpless. I'm out of it. There's nothing I can do to keep those guys safe. And then Jimmy, one of my closest buddies who I'd grown up in the military with, he joined around the same time I did. Seeing that he did, that was like the worst. So it was weird. And at that, being 25, thinking we know everything, but then seeing the wisdom in that room of going, we're going to let him process this, and there's nothing really that. And then they just looked at it and saw, hey, I think it's time for a nap. And I forget what they gave me, but I slept for whatever it was that they gave me. I was out for a long time. And so,
wow.
Yeah, it's a weird deal.
Going back now, fast forward, you're at home and you're in that moment of silence. What was your uplift? What was your moment of, I'm going in? What did someone choose that for you? What was your journey now from this point? Whether it was seeking help, therapy, talking about it. I mean, obviously you've gone on to do amazing things, and you're a true inspiration for every veteran, right? Every person that's experienced trauma, that there is no laying down on this, right? You're going to keep moving forward. You're going to appreciate every moment you have to breathe this air. What was your defining moment where someone either came in or you lifted yourself up to say, all right, let's go. I'm going to start my life. we're going, you've already said, I want to do everything I can to have a beautiful life of whatever I can do here. But what was that moment like coming out of that silence?
So I think so at Walter Reed, obviously one of the benefits to my situation was I was in a hospital bed with no legs. I wasn't getting out. I wasn't running away from anyone. I was stuck there. And so this first person that really came in to talk to me besides the ICU nurse was this doctor. And I remember seeing his Ohio State pin. And I just, obviously them being a Big Ten team and all that. And I didn't go to the U of M, so I really don't have a horse in the race. But I remember seeing that, and for some reason, just felt the connection. He made me, and it's Dr. Coonley. We still stay in contact.
That's cool.
He said, "You said, tell me everything you remember about the incident." And this was very shortly after finding out my friends had been killed, and he made me talk about it. And I could get a little bit through it, and then I'd have to pause. I'd be crying. I was upset, and he'd say, "Take your time. It's fine. We've got unlimited amount of time." And then I would tell a little bit more. And he'd say, "Okay, it's all good. Just pause." And then talking about it again. And they're checking to see what I remember, obviously for brain injury, but also making me talk about it. And then talking about it again. And then there are therapists that come in and realizing too, because on my own, there's no way I would have said, I think I'm going to need to go and talk to someone unless something happened that forced me to do it. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise. And they had learned a lot. The military medicine has grown so much compared to Vietnam, where they just kind of said, suck it up. They made me talk about it. And the first therapist was just a very, I couldn't stand him. And it wasn't because he was making me talk about uncomfortable things. He just was, I didn't feel like he was listening. Yeah. And it was, here's what you need to do. And it's going to be and it's like, no, that's not how it works. There's no one size fits all.
Yeah.
Right. What works for me might not work for you. What worked for you might not work for me. And so then realizing, and then I just was like, this is BS. I don't want any part. And they were like, hold on, we have someone else then to try. Dr. Andrea Boudery. And she was a civilian who was married to, I think, someone who had been in some very serious military stuff. So she got it. And I remember just talking to her, feeling comfortable. And at first I had nightmares about that day. And I remember one where we're going on that patrol. And I'm looking at my bracelet that has their names on it, my buddies that were killed. And I'm saying, we can't go. We can't go. And they're saying, we have to, it's our job. And we go on it, and this happens. Awful. Like, what's going to happen. I'm guessing you've probably been through the same, right, with what you went through. And so then I was like, I got to tell her about this. I told her about it, and she goes, what would you do if you knew there was a bomb there? And so we'd stop 100 meters short, our procedures. We do our 5 and 25s, make sure nothing's around the vehicle. We'd call EOD. They would come and detonate it. She goes, think about that before you go to sleep tonight. I did. I never had that dream before. I can say with honesty, I've never had my dreams about Iraq are us goofing around, firing pop cans over into the commander's compound, just goofing around. I don't, because of her and the tools that she gave, the only PTSD I have today is from my first marriage in the Minnesota Vikings. That's it. I'm very lucky. And it's because of the tools that were forced on me. Unlike my buddies that were over there, had to put tourniquets on, deal with that, say goodbye to 2 buddies that day and then another. Then they had to go back to work the next day, like nothing happened. And then they come back home and they go, why am I feeling like this? I have all my limbs. Well, no, that's not how. So it took time, but these guys eventually used the VA, talked about it, and they're all doing great now. But it took them, and this is the message of this isn't, oh, I'm tougher than the rest of it. No, I was forced services that they were not having access to. So I had a jump start in that regard, and they didn't. So once they used those services, those dudes are crushing. They're happy. They've got they're married with kids and living the dream. But it's that, that work that was put in that I never on my own would have done, because I'm stubborn and at the wrong time about the wrong things. And so I learned. And then to your point, to coming back, I was at first, I don't think lucky, but in hindsight, very lucky to realize that marriage wasn't great. and that's good. So, and I went through the things on my own. Physically, yeah, they were here every day. They helped provide, certain chores, this and that, whatever. But emotionally, I got through this on my own. And so then later, when I decided to get a divorce and make the right decision, and I had that alone time that I had never had really in my whole life, that's when truly, in hindsight, there's danger to this stuff creeping in. And
Right.
those things that you can keep at bay, you know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
Like that quiet there. But
Yep.
I had already had the quiet when I got home and they were in the house.
Yeah.
That here it wasn't so quiet, and I knew what to do, and I knew on my own how I could get through it.
Yeah.
And that feeling of I don't, and this is we need people in our lives, obviously. So I don't mean it like that, but
Right.
I can get through this, and I can get through anything on my own because now I have the tools that I learned.
This is the part where I want to get into this, because we learn growing up coping skills to be tough, right? You learn coping skills on how to get over things. Like in our generations, like get over it, you fall down off your bike, you scrape your knee, just get back up and keep riding, right?
Right.
You hurt yourself, you don't ever say to anybody, I'm not feeling mentally strong today. You don't
Right.
ever say that you're scared of something, right? Especially if you're going into the military or anything else. And then you get into the military and now you're trained, or in first responders, you're trained to deal with traumatic situations, or really in business or anything in life, you're trained to just keep going and the sun will always come up tomorrow, per thing. But it doesn't. And then you need to get trained now how to cope and learn new coping skills on how to cope with this traumatic event that's happened. And unfortunately, as you well know, our suicidal rates are crazy high, and they always have been, because people are not being offered the right services or being told that message that, hey, man, you've already been through all the tough shit. You've already checked off your tough box. Number one, you've checked it off. There's never anybody that's ever going to take that away from you. That's yours. It's ingrained, it's stamped into your soul, it's in your skull. It's yours. You are a tough SOB, regardless of what you are, right?
Sure.
Now, let's teach you how to cope with that trauma, those visions, that stuttering of speech, that heart rate, the nightmares, the pounding in the back of your head that is wanting to come out, that your brain's fighting, saying, no, you can't process that. So now let's try to teach you somehow, whether it's through therapy or whatever else. I went through EMDR therapy. That's what I got pushed on. It was amazing. I found
I've heard it's awesome.
It really is. I did the vibration, the paddle one. And the way it was explained to me in the very beginning, it totally made sense, was my therapist controlled the vibration. So as I started to go through the first minute of that night and start to describe the air and everything else, my heart rate would start to raise. So she would raise the vibration, and it got me talking a little bit more, which then unlocked, it was like a drawbridge that kind of lowered and let some of this back stuff that was pounding in my skull out a little bit at a flow that she was talking me through, so I could remember more about it. I could actually smell it. I could see it. I could hear it. I could feel it, everything, right? And then when it got too intense for me, because she was reading my body language and I'm processing and I'm crying, she would then close the drawbridge, lower the vibration, which closed the drawbridge, kept all the stuff back in here still, but then took that 1 minute or 2 minutes of time and put it into a black box and stuck it on a shelf, right? And then we did that for a year and a half, where all of a sudden I've got all these black boxes and they're in chronological order, and I could remember where I went. I could remember what I experienced. I was building my self-confidence and my strength to now that trauma went from back here to right here. And that's what I always talk about. Now that trauma is like a sphere and it's hovering here. And so I've learned through our training, our new training in life, right? Post-traumatic training. Yep. I've learned how to bob and weave. I get those spidey senses. If I'm in an environment that I'm feeling like, all right, I'm a little bit closed up. I got
Sure.
elevated positions in my case where maybe at like an outside concert or something, and I'm looking up and I don't really care for those are exposed. I'm hoping that law enforcement has eye on that because that's a
Hmm.
dangerous situation. And I start to feel that I know that trauma is starting to creep up on me and trying to get behind me again. So I need to slow down. I need to lower my heart rate. I need to either maybe go to the bathroom for a minute. I need to go get a drink, relax. I need to have some conversation, put myself into a safe spot. I mean, my back's usually always up against the wall now. I'm always kind of that way. But I need to be able to control that. And if my trauma is not out in front of me, I'm not going to be able to feel that, right? So
For
you got to
sure.
work hard as a veteran, as a person in society that's dealt with any type of trauma, because trauma is trauma,
Hmm.
regardless of the level of it and everything else, it's all different for everybody. But trauma is trauma. As long as you can keep that trauma and learn how to get it there, I think, and it sounds like that's what you did. That's what you were taught along the way through your medical journey, the first conversation with the Ohio State doctor, and all these things, right? And then
Yeah.
you went through too. The other part I wanted to touch on really quick is the first therapist that you saw, you felt like, man, I can't unleash. I'm not having a good connection, which means you're not going to be able to get everything you want out because there's still some sort of guarded deal there. And then you
Yeah.
found the other doctor that was like, okay, I can talk to you. All right, here it goes. You want to lower this whole thing and let it all out? Go for it. But I trust you. So you
Right.
need to find that, right? You need to find a
Right.
trusting therapist or someone you can talk to. And
Yeah.
then you need to learn how to get that therapy out. So
Right.
talk about sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, just I think to that point is if you go to one
Yeah.
and it doesn't work out, don't be like therapy is not for me.
Right.
Because if you go and if you put in the work, I haven't gone to a therapist since Walter Reed, and it's not because I'm a badass or
Right.
anything like that. It's
Right.
because the tools they equipped me with at Walter Reed have set me up very well for life and the coping mechanisms. And exactly like you said,
Yep.
it's very front. So even more recently, I got diagnosed with cancer. I had a lump growing on my side here, and it ended up. I got a biopsy that said it was cancer. I found out when I was up in the woods with the family of Corey Everson. We deer hunt together.
Wow.
Todd Everson, the guy who put the tourniquets on this leg and was like, everything's great. And Tim Nelson, who was in the seat behind me. So like my tightest group. And I was in a deer stand alone after just finding out because I got my chart notification on my phone and was like, your results are in. And I didn't clicked on it and it was, you have cancer. And you think everything, but it's those tools there that I learned
Yeah.
at Walter Reed. I hit it head on. I thought about every terrible thing that could happen, every good thing that I just hit it head on. I didn't have that stress about it. Was I concerned? Of course. Now they've since cut it out. It didn't spread. We're good. But to that point, it's like you go through stuff. You
Yeah.
went through stuff. I went through stuff. We all go through stuff. Maybe it's not going to be being in Vegas, being at a concert where a crazed man shooting at everyone, or in Iraq getting blown up. You could have a bad thing happen at work.
That's right.
You could be demoted. You could have whatever. But it's the how you deal with it, the choices you make, and how you hit it. If you hit it head on instead of being like, I don't want to think of this. I don't want, of course, you don't want to think about it. It's sucky to think about. But if you hit it head on, have it frontal, have your trauma ahead of you, you're going to be not only equipped to get through that one thing, but anything because adversity is always around the corner,
That's
always.
right. Yeah.
And then that's how you deal with it. So, yeah.
Good point. Oh man, yeah, you hit it. Adversity is always sitting there. It's always there. And like to your point, you don't have to go through all these big major things. I mean,
Right.
I
The
talked
goal
to a
is for
lot
it
of
not to happen.
yeah, I talked to a lot of vets and even first responders that they'll tell me like, man, you saw more action in your 8 hours than I saw my whole career, and or you saw this and that, and I never saw any of that. But I'm suffering. Like I still have these. It's almost like regret that they didn't get put into combat or they didn't get to experience what, what I experienced or what all those brave men and women experienced when they went back in, right? That wasn't just me. I definitely wasn't alone in that. But all of that, right? So there's this kind of regret. That's trauma. Like you need to be able to talk about that. We need to be able to like create a culture somehow, some way through talking to tough people like yourself and sharing the story of strength and adversity. So tell me about Still Standing and the book, man. I'm excited to hear about this.
So when I was giving, and it was before I really became a speaker per
Mhm.
se, like I was still just kind of sharing. And because of the nature of my injuries and that it was the largest deployment the Minnesota National Guard had been on since World War II, and then
Wow.
it ended up being the longest. Not for me, my buddies that were in Iraq point out that I quit halfway through the deployment,
I quit.
that I
Yeah.
quit on them. And so
Forced retirement.
yes. And
Yeah.
so the news locally was very involved. They were very like interested in my story. And so it's a very public thing. And so I had a lot of chances to talk about it and figure out, all right, you know what? I can't change what happened to me. And I don't want anyone to go through what I did. But if I can teach them the things that I've learned without them having to go through it, then I feel like that mission we had over there and even the terrible outcome that we went through was even more worth it than I already thought. And so I was talking at a Boy Scout fundraiser, and there was this is 2008. So I had been, this was before I medically retired from the military, but I was back home, and a gentleman in the audience that had helped be part of the fundraiser followed me out to my vehicle. And out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, this son of a gun. Like, am I going to have to throw hands? What's going on here? Because he was just kind of like weirdly following me. But it's now in hindsight, I know it's because it was an awkward question. He was like, I think that should be a book. And I was like, I agree, because this is insane. I still can't believe it happened. But I'm not a writer. Like I can be a little bit of a writer, but I'm not. I was an Army infantryman. Okay. So we're not wired that way. And he said, I want to write it. He had been a newspaper editor for the Las Vegas Sun. He had
Wow.
all these things, but he had never written a book. And so his name's Jim Cosmo. And his wife, he had just retired, and his wife's like, you said you're going to do what? And so we took that on, and we took 2 years to make sure it was accurate, respectful of those involved. But most importantly, what are we trying to do here? Not just tell a story so my daughter and her kids and whatever can read about grandpa or great great grandpa, whatever. What's the message that we want to give in this book? And it truly is that overall, and obviously we tell about what happens and we walk you through it first person present tense, except when I'm in the coma, obviously, is that what happened to me is not going to happen to most people. What happened to you is not going to happen to most people, and that's great.
Right.
But bad things happen to all of us, and it doesn't matter how big or how small or whatever that adversity we face is. What matters is the attitude that we choose, because attitude's a choice that will
Right.
help us overcome that and overcome anything in life. So
Yeah.
that's the message of the book. Um, it's been an
Wow.
awesome. Anytime people like say, "Hey, I read your book and it meant the world to me.
Mm.
I was going through this or whatever," or after one of my speeches, they'll say, "You know what? I had this happen to me," or a real heavy stuff, and they'll say, "And I felt kind of rudderless lately, and your message gave me strength or gave me hope." That's the best, more than any check that you get from these speaking engagements or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, that connection with people, being open and talking about the
Yeah.
worst day of my life and
Yeah.
having other people relate is so powerful. And
Yeah.
that's what really I feel fortunate that the book has led into that ability to kind of connect with people.
I think, yeah, you hit on so many great points. I mean, congratulations on getting that book completed. I'm
Thank
about
you.
185 pages right now into mine. So hopefully winter, fall launch. That's what we're looking for here.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been a process to write that. So I'm sure you going through that and co-writing, I mean, it's your story. But the whole idea of just still standing, right? We're still standing. We're here. Whether you can stand physically or not, Mentally, we're still standing. I talk about walking tall, standing up for yourself,
Mhm.
lifting up. I know for me, I'm a big faith believer. I
Me too.
I know that God and Jesus had their hands on me and they just grabbed me and pulled me up in a time when I was super dark, and it's been my strength, So I have, through my peer support, my buddies that have experienced trauma that's been relatable to me, because I think that's important too when you're talking about trauma, or you have trauma, whatever that is, whatever category it's in, whatever level it is, whatever. I think it's important for you to be able to find somebody that has experienced something like that that's relatable. Find a therapist that can treat that relatable that trauma, right? Or if you're on the other side of it and your buddy or your girlfriend or whatever is going through that relatable experience and you have a story, it's finding the courage to be able to share that story with them, to get them to talk about things, right? So
Right.
it's finding that relatability to help someone out of their silent mode, to stand up for themselves and to go get help, right?
Hmm.
What is your message? Because you're working with the VA and trying to really just help veterans coming back and first responders. I know, and I'll touch on this super quick before you answer, please. I know in the first responder community, you got firefighters, right? I talked to a lot of them. They go experience a call, and it's usually five on a team or so, and then they come back and they're together and they're all kind of experiencing that traumatic event together at the firehouse, which is their safe haven, right? Law enforcement, it's a lot like military, like you had described earlier in your story, where those guys are, now that we're helping you, we're getting probably some form of debriefing, whatever, but then probably tasked to go back out, right? And then go
Hmm.
back out. And law enforcement's the same way. EMTs, people that are going back out, our nurses, our doctors, our teachers, people that are on the front line, basically are constantly getting hit at one trauma event after another. So what has been your message through your journey and what you're fighting for now to help save lives and put people on the right mental path?
I think it's a balance of obviously hitting your trauma head on, but also staying busy. And that's how, like, at
Mm,
first,
yeah.
and when I got back from Walter Reed, I feel like mentally I had gotten all the tools I needed. But then I had so many people asking me, how are you doing? How are you doing? And really wanting to know how I was doing. And I spent a lot of time early on telling everyone how great I was doing, when really I was trying to tell myself how great I was doing.
Yeah.
And at 25, 26, there's no class, there's no training, there's no military training that can set you up for that. And coming back to a house that is full but feels empty and dealing with all that stuff on top of it, kind of that loneliness. So it's that, but also staying busy, because during that time, I was finding things to do to keep my time. During the time when the ex-wife was at work during the day, and the stepkids, once I dropped them off to school and before I picked them up, I'd start going to the driving range, hitting golf balls. And I'm very passionate about golf. It's something that helped me really get comfortable with my prosthetics and trust myself. Because if you swing too hard and fall on a golf course, you're fine. It's grass. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
Buddies are going to laugh at you, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Um, so all of that, but staying busy, so it's that sometimes, and I think World War II veterans were the most guilty of this. They all came back from crazy trauma, nonstop battles, front lines, all
Yeah.
that. And then coming back, immediately going to work, starting a family, all of that. They'd come home, cocktails, spending the out, whatever it was, to just kind of push it back and staying busy. That's not what I mean. I mean, like, I hit it head on and I knew kind of what was going on around me, that the marriage wasn't on good footing. Um, no pun intended. And then I need to take care of me. And you learn that, especially being military, just I think with a good upbringing, if you
Yeah.
have good values, you're a selfless person.
Yeah.
But at times you need to be selfish. You need to you look out for number one, take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, there's a reason. why on an airplane, when they're giving the instructions, when they say, put your oxygen mask on before helping others, because you can't help others if you pass out. You know what I mean?
That's
So
right.
you're
That's right.
all of those things is that you're of no help to anyone if you don't take care of yourself. And so learning that, realizing it kind of the hard way. And at first, I never felt sorry for myself, but I was like, it would be nice to be able to tell someone this. And Tim, others were very upset at me when they found out the stuff that was going on marriage wise and all that, that I didn't tell them. But I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I didn't want you also to treat her different. If you knew what was going on, then that would make things awkward. Also, I got to figure this out. It's nice to talk to someone about things like that, but you also do need to figure things out on your own. So all of that I learned really set me up for now. Truly, I'm happier now than I've ever been in my whole life. I've got my
Hmm.
4-year-old little daughter Chloe, who is just the my world, and my wife, the most supportive, my current wife, the most supportive wife I could ever ask for. You have those things, and I never want to forget December 2nd, 2006, because that day
Yeah.
sucked.
Yeah.
That day sucked, and I'll never forget it, and I never want to, because it makes, when I dropped my daughter off at daycare today before this, she was saying the sweetest things to me. It
Yeah.
makes those moments so much more special
Yeah.
because I remember those dark days.
People say it all the time. I used to hear, like, people that experience near death traumatic events, how like the butterflies are just beautiful and the
Yeah,
flowers are just, yes, you know what? They are. Everything is sweeter in life. I'm not afraid to like tear up, and
yeah,
I'm not, yes, I'm like so hardwired. I was raised by a professional athlete. Like, no, you're not going to cry.
right. Oh, and
But
your dad's tough.
my
So
dad's one tough SOB.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Very nice, generous, kind. I mean, he's a great dad, but he was a battler out on the field, right? Yeah. Do not take that ball away from me. Um,
hmm
but listen, John, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going in and sharing your incredible story. First of all, thank you for your service. I know
Thank
you
you.
hear that a lot. And I think that's one thing, it's one message I've been trying to share with a lot of people is when you share your thoughts and admiration towards a veteran or a first responder, somebody that's gone out of their way to help others, when you say thank you, it means a lot, but genuinely mean it.
Yeah,
Genuinely put yourself in their shoes and understand what they've truly done to help you where you are today, for us to be able to live free in this great country and for us to be able to say things that we want, to have a podcast and the sacrifices that they've experienced and unfortunately their families have experienced, right? So
right.
I really do appreciate your service and what you've done too. We didn't get into the politician side of being on the house and all these things. Maybe that's a
That's
part
all right.
two. Your
Sure.
book. We're gonna promote this like crazy, but man, somebody told me it was Chief Bernie Meehan, is a firefighter out of Connecticut. He said we're brothers by trauma.
Mhm.
So I'm here for you. You ever need
Likewise.
anything, and let's keep this friendship up, and maybe we'll go fishing one day up in those one of those Great Lakes in Minnesota.
Yes, and you tell your dad hello. I know when I got back to Minnesota on my R&R, they had me up in the booth to talk for one inning. Well, I threw out a first pitch in May
Oh
of
wow.
'07,
Okay.
and your dad's been great. Ran into him at a Cleveland game a couple of years back, and he's awesome. And so it was great to
I
meet
will.
you. Thanks for telling your story too, because it's key, man.
Yeah. Well, it's just we're in the fight. It's trying to teach people how to go through basic training for yourself now. Yeah.
Correct.
So yeah. But thank you, sir, for coming on, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Cheers, my friend.